Hey everyone, so this video is going to be a continuation talking about my experience growing up with a narcissistic father. In the first video, I talked about my experience growing up with an abusive stepfather as a child, and then this video will be talking about my biological father, who's also a narcissist. So, a bit of backstory: my parents were not married to each other. They were together until I was about maybe two, I believe. And my mom got pregnant at the towards the end of her college. So she did finish college, and I was born after she graduated. My father was still in college, but he only went to college about 3 hours away from his hometown. So he would come home on the weekends, and I would be at my grandparents' house, which were his parents. And as far as I know, I don't think he was really that involved with me when he came home. I think he would see me because he stayed with his parents while he came home, but other than that, he was still doing his own thing and partying and whatever. But he did get married for the first time to a woman when I was 4 years old, and she was really great. We still keep in contact, and I consider her to be like a godmother to me, is what I call her. And when they were together, it was a really happy time in my mind. I remember I would go over there on the weekends, and we would always do stuff like go to the mall and to amusement parks. And I thought at this time that I was a daddy's girl. I thought my dad was just the coolest person ever, and he was so much fun, and we would play together all the time. And then my stepmother was also really involved with me as well. And then looking back, I realized that my father was pretty neglectful during that time. We would do things that were fun, like I mentioned, but he's also very childish. And so it was things that he wanted to do. And it just so happened that I was there and I liked doing those things as well. And I just liked being in his presence. But when I looked back, there was really no emotional bond between us. I can't think of a time that he really engaged with me for the things that I wanted to do. And he also had a lot of affairs. He was a serial cheater. And so then looking back, I also realized he would be gone a lot during the evenings. We'd go out and do our fun stuff, and then it would just be me and my stepmother at the apartment. And then looking back, and as I grew and figured out more about him, I realized that he was cheating. And they divorced when I was 9. And when they set me down and told me they were getting divorced, I was, of course, like really sad, and I didn't take it very well. And shortly after they got divorced, he got with this woman who I guess he had been with, um, during the marriage, and so they were open about their dating. And I got to meet her, and she had a son who was a few years younger than me, and I was not fond of her at all. Even from the get-go, she seemed very um, withdrawn and like she didn't care for me either. And I was 9 at this point when they got together, because I met her like pretty instantly. But when he got with this woman, that is when everything began to change. He became a lot more overt with his ignoring me. He became very mean. His wife would talk down to me like I was I guess, younger than I really was. I can't really describe it, but it was just the way that she would talk to me. And when I went to go spend the night over there, when I went to go stay at their house on the weekends, he would mostly leave me with her while he went out and did his own stuff, or sometimes he was working, but he would leave me at the house alone with her. And she um, never engaged with me. I pretty much just sat there by myself, or I had my stepbrother to play with, but I became a caretaker for him. And so I had to um, take care of him. I had to do whatever he wanted, even if it was like he wanted to play. I couldn't say no, and we just had to do everything that he wanted to do. And it was the same with my stepmom. We had to do whatever she wanted to do, and if I expressed any wants or needs, I was told I was selfish, and I couldn't, say no or voice my own opinion about things. And also around this time, once I became maybe 10 or 11, they got married when I was 11. My father just came to have lunch with me at school one day and was like, "Hey, I'm getting married this afternoon." And I was really sad about it because, like I said, we didn't get along at all. But when they got married, he had started to come pick me up less on the weekends. He would tell me that he was on his way, and he either wouldn't show up at all or even call to let me know he wasn't coming, or he would come like hours later. I would get home from school around 3:30, 4 o'clock, and he'd say he was on his way, and he wouldn't come till 9:30, 10 o'clock at night when he didn't live that far away. And it was continued neglect when I did go over there, because, like I said, he would mostly be gone, or he still wouldn't engage with me. They began to give me what you would call, I guess, the Cinderella treatment. I was expected to do all the dishes, the cleaning, the laundry, everything. And what made it worse is that none of the stuff I was really cleaning up was mine. Because, like I said, if he did pick me up, he would pick me up so late at night. And so it's not like I used any of the dishes. I didn't have clothes at their house, so it was all their laundry. And I realized later what they were doing was it was like they were saving the laundry for me to do, because I'd come to their house on the weekends and there would be like 2 baskets full of clothes, like they didn't wash since the last time I was there. I never had a bed at their house. I slept on the couch or on this big chair where I could stretch out my legs. But I didn't have a bed, and the blanket they gave me was always dirty. So I started to bring my own my own blanket to their house. And when I would tell my father what my stepmom was doing, because at first the cleaning and the treatment and stuff would start like when he wasn't there, and so I tried to tell him what was happening, and he would just say like, "Oh, you're being you're being dramatic, or it's not that bad," or he would say like, "Well, we're your family too, so this is just doing chores like you would do at home at your mom's house." But of course, at my mom's house, I wasn't expected to do everything by myself. And also, my stepbrother would not help. My stepmother didn't allow him to help, or she would have him help just to give me more stuff to do. So, for example, she would tell him to put the dirty dishes in the dishwasher, And he would do that, but he wouldn't rinse the dishes off first, so they'd still have like gunk and stuff and they'd just be filthy. And she didn't teach him to wash the dishes off first, so she had him put the dishes in the dishwasher knowing he wouldn't do it correctly, and then have me take the dishes out to rinse them off and then put them back. There was this one time where I had to mop the kitchen and I was doing it, and my stepbrother called himself trying to help. And I can't remember exactly what happened, but he knocked over the bucket of water and the water spilled on the floor. And my stepmother got mad at me for allowing my stepbrother to knock over the bucket. And so she yelled at me, and then I had to remop the whole floor. And so stuff like that was just kind of, that was pretty common. And she wouldn't talk to me unless it was to tell me to do something. And she was always, quote unquote, sick whenever I came over. I never knew what the ailment was, but she would always suddenly just come down sick, and then she would have to stay in bed, and then I'd have to go to her and see like what she wanted. So I had to do stuff for her while she laid in bed, and then also take care of my stepbrother because she was supposedly too sick to do anything. And she thought it was funny sometimes to actually call me Cinderella, still never ever calling me by my name. And when I told my dad that as well, he was like, it's just a joke, or like, oh, you're being too sensitive and stuff like that. And so during this time, I actually thought that my stepmom was the problem. And I thought like, oh, if he wasn't married to her anymore, then he would be nice again. And so then I just like really wanted them to separate. And so I still really loved my father, and I wanted to, you know, have his approval. And I thought we had this bond that she was just coming in between. But looking back, I know that's not correct. He played a role too, even though it was still like a passive role, but he knew everything that was happening because I told him, and for some of the stuff he was there for it. And but yeah, my stepmother just controlled everything. There was one time in particular I had stopped eating um, red meat for a while. I didn't eat beef or pork anymore, and I told him that when I went over there for a weekend, and we were in the grocery store trying to figure out what we wanted to eat. And my stepmother was mad because my father was just going to make um, turkey burgers instead of regular beef burgers. And my stepmom didn't want turkey burgers. And so then my dad was like, okay, well, I'll just make both turkey and beef. But that still wasn't good enough for her. And so she told my father that if I was over there and I didn't want to eat what she wanted, then I just wouldn't eat anything for the whole visit. And they got into this big argument in the store, and it was like really embarrassing and scary because he was yelling. And I thought at the time, like, wow, he finally stood up for me about these burgers. And I was really excited. And then I realized for him it was kind of just a issue of like he didn't like being told what to do. And so that's what the argument was about. Not even because I didn't eat the beef, because on other visits he would claim he forgot that I didn't eat beef. And this went on for years and years and years. It was like he could never remember that I didn't eat beef. So he would cook things that I couldn't eat. And so I just started to take my own food over to their house, which made him upset because I actually don't know why it made him upset, but he would tell me, like, oh, you think you're too good to eat what we eat over here. And he didn't want me to bring my own food. And so what I would have to do was pack my food and eat what I brought when he wasn't at the house. So I'd have to wait until he went to sleep or until he left and cook it quietly so my stepmother couldn't hear me um, making stuff in the kitchen from her room. Um, so while he was with her, everything just became about what my stepmother and stepbrother wanted. There was one time on my birthday, I asked him if we could spend the day just he and I. I think it was like my 14th birthday or something. I don't remember. And at first, he said no because that was selfish to try to exclude my stepmother and stepbrother. And then he said that we could go see a movie together, just the two of us. And so I was really excited. And we both used to like going to see horror movies. Uh, that was our thing, or that was his thing that I tagged along with. But I liked it. And then when it was time to go see the movie, my stepmother became sick again out the blue and said that my stepbrother had to go with us. And my stepbrother did not want to go see the movie that I picked, which was some scary movie. He wanted to go see Charlie and the Chocolate Factory because that was when it came out, whatever year that was. And so I was upset about having to go see that. And then my father was like, well, you're just being selfish, like it's just a movie, not getting the actual reason why I was upset. And so we ended up going to go see Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And to this day, I still hate that movie, not only because it was stupid, but because it also reminds me of the whole reason that I ended up going to see it in the first place. Um, he became very volatile and manipulative as well towards this time. So, for example, there was this one time where he was supposed to come pick me up. As usual, he didn't, or he was waiting so long. And so I went to my aunt's house, which is his sister. And I was at her house because I like spending time with her. And he called me there and said he was going to come get me. And I was like, well, I don't want to come because you waited so late. So let's just wait until next weekend. And I was about 12 at this point, I believe. And so he started um, yelling at me and telling me that he was going to come get me anyway. And we got into this huge yelling match on the phone where we were both cursing each other out. I said a lot of things that I really shouldn't have said at that age, but I was like so upset and I was crying. And my crying was always taken as, being manipulative and being dramatic. I wasn't allowed to cry or be angry or sad or anything but happy with him. And so we got into this huge yelling match, and I actually don't remember what ended up happening. He didn't come get me that day, but I don't remember if I went over the next day or the following weekend. But when I did go back over there, he showed me the child custody arrangement that he and my mom had with the court, all the documents, and he was telling me like, well, your mom is brainwashing you to hate me and to keep you away from me, and she's manipulating you, but this is how often I'm supposed to get you. And so the legal arrangement was I was supposed to come stay with him like every other weekend, and they were supposed to alternate holidays, and during the summer I was supposed to stay with him for a month. But my whole life we had never followed this because he didn't live that far. He lived in the same county, and my mom, and I guess he at the time, but especially my mom, believed in like co-parenting. And as long as the parents are like getting together and they live in close enough proximity, they shouldn't have to follow an actual schedule. The child should just be able to see each parent whenever they want. And that's how they had always done it. But he basically used those papers to say that I should have been coming over there more than I actually was. And if I tried to say I didn't want to come again, then he would fight for full custody of me. And that really scared me because I didn't want to live with him and I didn't want to go over there anymore than I actually did. So I just began to accept going over there. And so I didn't really try to argue about it anymore. There were a few times that I would say like, "Oh, I don't want to come over," and then um, he would guilt trip me and say, I needed to come over and how it wasn't fair that I didn't want to come over, and I would start feeling really bad about it and think like, well, I guess I should go over there and I should spend time with him too because he is my dad. And so that continued all through my teenage years. Um, and my my stepbrother and I actually did get along, even though he could be, kind of annoying, and I was I guess the whipping child for him, and I got in trouble when he did things. But he actually was a pretty cool kid. But my stepmother ended up losing custody of him because she was abusive to him as well. And he ended up going to go live with his biological dad, who lived, I guess, somewhere in the city. And so when he left the house, that was really isolating because when I would go over there, I wouldn't have anybody to keep me company or talk to. And I would just end up, for the most part, not talking the whole weekend because my father, either he wasn't there or even when he was there, he was ignoring me. And then my stepmother, like I said, would not speak to me unless it was to tell me what I needed to clean or what I needed to do. Um, and one of the biggest things I remember my father doing was we were out one day doing we did a bunch of different things. We went roller skating, we went out to eat. We were doing all this stuff with some of their friends. They had this couple that I guess they knew and they were friends with. And my father was drinking because he's also an alcoholic, or he was. And he had been drinking the whole day. And so when we got to this big arcade place with bowling and everything, he was really drunk at this point. And he and my stepmother had been arguing because she was also pretty volatile to him. They would pick fights with each other, both very, very toxic people. And they got into an argument, and I don't know what it was about, but he grabbed her and he pushed her against the wall. And then she starts screaming, and I remember people running to get my father off of her because he wouldn't let her go and just had her pinned against the wall. And I got scared and I ran into the bathroom and started crying. I think I was about maybe 14 or 15. I'm not sure. The years kind of like merged together. But I was in the bathroom crying, and this one woman who I guess her and her boyfriend had seen it happen, the woman comes into the bathroom and comforts me and asks me if I want to call somebody to come and pick me up. And so I tell her yes, and she gives me her cell phone, and I call my aunt, one of my mom's sisters, because it was kind of late at this point, but I knew my aunt would still be up. And I'm gonna lose, sorry, I'm gonna lose battery here. Time to wrap it up. But I call my aunt and tell her what happened, and I want to go home. And my father would not let me go home. And I was still scared because the police were there and I was afraid they were going to take him to jail. Um, though I did kind of want that because at least he'd be away from me and I'd feel a bit safer. But the police ended up not taking him to jail, and my stepmother didn't want to press charges. And my father also wouldn't let me go home because he said it was too late. The woman and her boyfriend offered to like take me, and I would have felt a lot safer with them, even though I didn't know them. The couple that they were with offered to let me spend the night with them, and then my father just come get me in the morning. But my father said no to that. Even my stepmother suggested I go home because she wouldn't want me there anyway, and he just wouldn't let me um, go home. And then he told me that there was no reason for me to cry because it was just two people arguing, and I was acting like I had never seen two adults fight before, which I hadn't seen a real physical altercation like that before. So it was pretty traumatizing. But the whole time I was crying, he just told me I was being dramatic and I was being manipulative just to get my way and go home. And when I did tell my mom what happened, he was also upset because he was like, what happens in my house stays in my house. And I was wrong for telling my mom and also telling my grandfather, who was his father, what happened. And so that was I guess you could say, the first stage of the abuse. And so then what that taught me was, I can't be I can't be upset because that's selfish. My crying was manipulative and dramatic. Any wants or needs was selfish of me. And oh, one final thing I remember that he would do when it was my birthday or holidays, he used to at first be pretty good with getting me like the gifts that I asked for. Or once I got older, I didn't really know what I wanted at first. So I would just tell him, you can get me money or a gift card. And he would get me things. He started to get me things like perfumes and body lotions, like from Bath and Body Works. And although those smell good, I have very sensitive skin and I'm allergic to them. And so the first time it happened, I told him, like, oh, I'm allergic, I can't use this. And so he'd take it and give it to my stepmom because it was things that she liked. And that also became a pattern. So I guess he basically stopped buying me birthday gifts and Christmas gifts when I was about 12. And then every other year, he would buy me some soap or some lotion that I couldn't use. And I would remind him yet again that I was allergic to it. And then it just so happened to be something that my stepmom liked. And so she would get, whatever it was. So that's when things started to change, and they finally got separated when I was about 19. So that went on for about 10 years. And then they officially divorced when I was like 21, I believe. And in the next video, I will talk about what happened through my adulthood and what happened when I made the grave mistake of moving in with him and how that affected the relationship. And so if you made it through the end of this video, thank you. I'm sorry it was so long. I hope that somebody is able to relate to it and maybe understand what narcissistic parenting can look like. And I will see you all in the next video.